We are studying the Sermon of the Mountain. Last week I said that when we speak about the Sermon of the Mountain, we generally think that this is about only the Beatitudes. However, that is only the introduction, the beginning part of the Sermon of the Mountain. As a matter of fact, the Sermon of the Mountain is extended almost over 3 chapters, and during the Sundays of Lent we will try to cover that. We'll start reading with verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither people light up a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. The Sermon of the Mount of our Lord Jesus Christ is equivalent to the law that was given in the Old Testament. And as we read, we will find out that there are so many resemblances to the law that was given by God to Moses in the Old Testament. But one of the main differences that we find between the 10 Commandments per se and the Sermon of the Mount is that the 10 Commandments is constructed in a way that it looks like, and please do not be scandalized, it looks like a contract that was used back in the day between 2 nations. A nation that is being conquered by a stronger nation, they would sign a treaty. And the language in there is almost similar to that. As if God is saying, I am your God, and this is the law. But here, in the New Testament, the tone that Jesus sets, the words that he uses, is totally different. In the world of psychology, we would say Jesus is using positive reinforcements. He's praising the people around him. We read last week about the Beatitudes, the blessings, words of encouragement that Jesus said. And today we read again similar words. Jesus talking to the people around him, not necessarily his disciples, and he uses 2 very unique images, the image of salt and light. Now I think it was last month when we were having the family worship here, and we picked that text to read and study with our young families or young children. And I tried to explain this in a way that it would make sense to them. And one of the examples that I thought would be easy for them to understand was the example of French fries and salt. So I gave them the example of McDonald's, and I told them not to go there often, but when you go there, you need some salt to make your French fries tasty. I thought it worked. But then as I was stepping out, one of the parents told me, do you know that too much salt is bad for you? It's bad for blood pressure. And I said, yes, I know that. And when I try to explore this text with an adult population, I will try to give a different analogy. And here we go. Salt. One of the ways to cure fish was by salting, right? It's something that you see when you go to the market. There are places where they sell salted fish. It is one of the ways that is used to preserve fish for the future. Now let's try to understand the words of Jesus from that perspective. The salt does not have only the function of seasoning the food, but it also has the function of preserving it. I use the analogy of fish. Let's go on with the fish. Let's imagine that you have a fish sitting on the countertop of your kitchen for 2 days. You know what happens, right? It smells. It stinks very bad. And sometimes that is the situation of our society that we live in. With all the promiscuousness, all the bad things in the society, sometimes we stink. And Jesus is calling us to make a difference, to change that, to become the salt so that the values of our Christian ethics is not only preserved, but also implemented in the society. He goes on saying that you are the light of the world. We know the importance of light, but let's try to read one more time what Jesus is requesting from us. Let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Jesus is setting each and every one of us on a mission to make sure that the light of God is shining in the society that we live in. Jesus is not asking us to leave everything behind, to become saints overnight. If you can't do that, go ahead and do it. I'm having a hard time doing that. But Jesus is asking us to take simple steps to make sure that we are influencing positively the people around us. And you never know what your simple actions, what effect may have on the life of the people around you. I will give you a very simple example, and I hope that you can relate to that. I'm sure that you will have so many similar examples that can further illustrate what Jesus is saying. We used to live with our grandparents, and on every Saturday evening, my grandma would light a charcoal and put some incense on it, and she would go around the house saying a prayer and telling us that we need to do this because it is the Sunday Eve, Girak Damut, as she used to say. Now, as kids, I did not understand what was going on. It was something that I did not enjoy. But now, as a more mature person, every Saturday evening, no matter where I am, no matter what am I doing, I remember that it is Saturday Eve, Sunday is coming, and it is called to be a different day for us. You are parents. Some of you are grandparents. You have responsibilities. It is with those little things that you can imprint something on the hearts, on the souls of the people around you. And in that way, the values of our Christian faith will go from one generation to the other. Should we go on? Are you guys tired? I can stop whenever you want. Let's try to go on. Okay, we read from verse 17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth, until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. This sounds like a disclaimer that Jesus is making about his attitude towards the law. Practicing the law of the Old Testament was not a picnic. It was very difficult. People had a hard time practicing. And there were the scribes, the Pharisees, who were imposing on them certain regulations to practice the law even more diligently. And there was this idea that the Messiah would come and the law would be gone. But Jesus comes to say, the law will not be abolished. Not even the smallest letter of the law will be abolished. But I have come here to fulfill the law. Jesus came and he gave the right interpretation of the law. There are some people who only take the New Testament and they say we don't even need what's before that. It does not have anything to do with us. This changes that because Jesus is saying that the law is important. And one of the things that we try to educate our people, we try to teach them about our faith, is by teaching them the Ten Commandments, which is the heart of the law. And once you know that, that will bring us closer to God. Because sometimes we need to practice certain things before we start understanding. And I'm not going to put anyone in the spot, but there are people here in this crowd who back in the day, when were approached by the clergy to come to church more often, they would say, we don't understand anything when we come to church. But to their credit, they gave it a try. They came here once, they came here twice, now they're part of it. What I'm trying to say is that when you make an effort, try to do something, you will start to understand and embrace it. The same applies to the Ten Commandments. Once you explore it and try to practice it, that will help you to take a step closer and embrace Christianity and try to look deeper to the meaning of our theology. Jesus teaches about anger. I'm reading from verse 21. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to the court. Do it while you are still with him on the way, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. I tell you the truth, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. This reading is to be understood in comparison with one of the commandments, do not murder. The commandment from the Ten Commandments is very clear, do not murder. And none of us, I'm assuming, are murderers here. We have never killed anyone, right? It's very simple. But when we read the explanation of Jesus, then the commandment makes a different sense to us. Because Jesus is pointing to the cause of murder, which is anger. He is dealing with the issue of anger and the way that we treat people. With the Ten Commandments, we're kind of dealing with the consequence of when somebody is angry, they don't know what they're doing, to the point of killing someone. But here, Jesus is asking us to pay attention of the way we live, the way that we handle things. I think one of the most important things that has to do with us is the second part, about offering the gift. Jesus makes the connection between the way that we live and the way that we pray. They are connected. We think that they are isolated things. We can live our lives Monday to Saturday the way that we like, and then we come here on Sunday and we have a clean slate and we go home and we start our week again. It turns out that it's not that way. Because as per Jesus, he is saying, if you're about to offer your gift, and offering the gift, by the way, was one of the most important expressions of worship, equivalent to the way that we celebrate Badarak here. As if Jesus is saying us, if you're here to celebrate Badarak, if you're here to take the Holy Communion, and you remember that you have issues with your brother, go and reconcile and then come back. This is pretty difficult, because we know that even here in this community, there are people who have chosen to cut ties with their family members because of whatever happened in the past. And I'm not here to judge anyone, but when we read these words, at least we should give it a try. Try not to revisit the past, not to try to convince our brothers that he was wrong and I was right, but just try to find something that can connect us to our family members. Because when we do that, we will find the serenity that we need, not only for our spiritual lives, but our everyday lives. Now, before everybody sleeps, I will stop here, and we will continue next Sunday. I hope you are enjoying this. We are studying the Gospel of Matthew. We will be studying these chapters